When looking for a tax-friendly country, people often make the mistake of checking only the headline tax rate and not understanding what tax incentives are on offer to reduce their tax rate. Today, I'm going to give you 9 examples of countries that you might think have high taxes, but you could potentially live in with low taxes. So we've all heard of Monaco, the Cayman Islands, Dubai. There are plenty of tax-free countries that are out there, and you can move to those. We've talked about tax-free countries. We've talked about territorial tax countries. We've talked about countries with tax exemptions. And today, I'm going to roll out some of those, as well as other kinds of countries where you can legally reduce your tax rate far below what people locally are paying by using incentives designed for foreigners and other tax incentives. If it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consulting firm that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally reduce their taxes, diversify and protect their assets, and increase their freedom overseas. We also host Nomad Capitalist Live, the biggest and best annual event for a global citizen strategy. So let's get started. I'm going to simplify some of these things because everyone's situation is different. Every program works a little bit differently. And so I'm going to give you kind of a layman's explanation of how some of these programs work and how you can use them. Obviously, the devil's in the details. You want to do tax planning. You want to consult the right people. And obviously, there's more than we're going to just cover in this short episode. But let's start in Western Europe, because people often think that Western Europe is high tax. And it's true. A lot of countries in Western Europe do have very high taxes, including for folks who already live there. But if you come in as a foreigner, you may be able to save dramatically. And the first country is the UK. Now, the UK is harder to get into these days. If you happen to have Irish citizenship, or you can obtain Irish citizenship by descent, you can move to the UK and you can live there that way. Otherwise, you need to go for one of the increasingly difficult residence permits to get into the UK. However, once you're there, you can take advantage of a tax system that allows people who don't have a domicile there to basically pay tax on the money that they are living on in the UK. And so if you've heard of Switzerland's system, it's not entirely the same, but it functions, again, layman's explanation, a little bit similarly, where it's like, okay, how much are you going to spend to live? How much money are you bringing into the country? And even that isn't always the case, but that's a simple explanation. The money that you're bringing into the country to live on, what are your expenses? We're going to tax you on that at whatever the normal rate is, and those rates are not going to be low. However, let's say you make $5 million a year and you're living on $500,000 a year. Even if you paid 40-some% on the $500,000, overall, I mean, you're talking about single-digit percentage tax rates on your overall tax situation. Now, this is not going to work as well for cryptocurrency investors. That is generally the position. But if you have a business, if you're an entrepreneur, and you are earning substantial amounts of money, this could be better than some of the schemes you may see publicized, like Portugal's anti-jar scheme. And it may give you a little bit better lifestyle than living somewhere else that's totally tax-free. It may be worth paying those couple of percentage points. They're going to get a decent amount of money out of you, more than they probably get out of the average person, but you're going to have a very low tax rate. And if you can get into the UK, you can do that. Next door in Ireland, similar system, a lot fewer people doing it. And the UK, there's always some controversy, less so in Ireland. And so you can get into Ireland by numerous different residence permit options. If you're not working, there's a couple of options. If you are working, there's a couple of options. And if you want to invest, you can start off from a €500,000 donation to a €1 million investment, probably the better one, €2 million into REITs. You can live there. But if you don't have that kind of money, you don't want to invest that kind of money in Ireland, there are other ways that you can live there. It just requires a little bit more effort in terms of maintaining your structure. Once you're there, again, there are certain complexities to how your business works. If you have investments, that's going to work a little bit differently. Again, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, probably not going to work as well here. None of this is tax advice, by the way, but just giving you kind of our understanding. But you can bring in money to the country, again, simplifying that, and you can pay tax on that. And so the top rates, you're going to get over just a little bit over half. But if the money that you're living on, if the money that you're bringing in is substantially less than what you're making, then it turns out to be a pretty good deal. The country is getting more money than they would get from the average taxpayer by far. You're not really using any of the social services, and you get to live there and potentially get your tax rate down into the single digits. You're contributing, they're giving you access, and by the way, your tax benefits may or may not be affected, but you can work towards citizenship in both of the aforementioned countries. Elsewhere in Europe, the lump sum system that I mentioned earlier for Switzerland, where you just pay a fixed amount, Italy and Greece have simplified that, where in Italy, it's €100,000 per year. If you're married and you want to go in together, €125,000 a year. And you can benefit that for well over a decade. So as long as you haven't been living and paying taxes in Italy, including if you get Italian citizenship by descent while you're living in the US, Australia, wherever else, Just because you have the citizenship doesn't mean you can't take advantage of this deal. You could be an Italian citizen who has just lived out of the country for a long time. You can come back and you can take advantage of this, pay one flat tax rate, and you will be left alone. And so if you are looking at, again, Portugal's NHR scheme and you're making 2 million euros, you can get a better deal. I'm not talking about the lifestyle. I'm not talking about working towards a passport, because Italy's passport takes longer to get. But if you have 2 million euros in net income, you're probably better off from a financial standpoint going to Italy than going to Portugal. And when you consider the extra legwork involved in maintaining a structure that's friendly with Portugal's system, you may find it worth it, even if you're in the 1-point-something million category. So you can get a residence permit in Italy. There's a number of ways to do that, kind of like in Ireland. You can also do their more expensive golden visa program. They recently discounted it. Either option works, and you can pay a flat amount of tax. Same deal in Greece, which is going to have a real estate component, but basically borrowed from Italy's system. And so if you want to live in Italy, if you want to live in Greece, I happen to think actually among the Spain, Italy, Greece countries that are a little bit disorganized, Greece is the one that I've seen consistently have the best service. And so if you want to buy property in Greece, that may be an option as well. Greece, probably harder to work towards citizenship by naturalization, but really any of these countries have citizenship by descent. That could help you, but there's also plenty of ways to get in with a residence permit. And so you've got 4 different countries in Western Europe which are tax friendly, but you wouldn't know it. So obviously we're not talking about Monaco, we're not talking about Andorra. Those have 0 or low tax rates. These are countries that have high tax rates for everybody else, but they want foreigners to come and bring their money. And so if you're willing to pay something, you're going to get in, and I think it's really a win-win for everybody. Eastern Europe, a couple countries, Serbia, moderately low tax rates on corporations, relatively high tax rates on personal income. However, if you want to live in Serbia, we've seen more people who are looking at more open, more personal freedom countries going to Serbia, going to Montenegro, going to the Balkans in general. You can structure, because Serbia's tax code is more flexible than countries in the European Union, you can structure your affairs in Serbia to pay potentially 0, but certainly a rather de minimis amount, single-digit percentage of tax. So you get to make the choice. Do you want the greater consumer conveniences of a country like the UK or Ireland? Do you want the romance of Italy or Greece? Or do you want a country like Serbia, which is at the border of the EU but not in it, and so offers a bit more of that freedom? You can do that, and with proper structure, you can dramatically reduce your taxes. In Georgia, territorial tax country, so if you structure your affairs properly, money that's earned offshore stays offshore. If you have a salary, that should be evaluated, but again, if your salary is substantially less than what your company makes, then you can pay a nominal amount of tax. And if you are an individual entrepreneur and you register for that, you can pay a 1% rate of tax on about $150,000. So not a bad deal. Also going to offer you more personal freedom, a bit more eager to be in Europe, so a little bit different vibe than Serbia, but a place that offers a lot of lifestyle benefits, beautiful country. So do you want something more rugged, a bit more free, a bit more affordable, or do you want to be in Western Europe? You can make the choice. Also Armenia, if you are just starting out, has tax benefits where you can basically pay 0 and then very low rates of tax on a new business that doesn't generate a lot of money. So if you're just starting out, that can be an option as well. And so those are 7 countries in Europe. Let's talk about the Americas. And we've talked historically about countries like Panama. People think of that as a tax haven. By the way, Panama actually does have taxes if you live there and you're doing business there, but they have a great territorial system where, again, structured properly with a few caveats, you can earn your money offshore, live in Panama, and you don't have a tax burden. And so people, I think of it that way. Costa Rica is a country with a similar system. They're always, not always, but they have been flirting with getting off of their territorial system and going to a different tax system. It'd be interesting to see what exactly that looks like, because we've seen countries like Malaysia that have threatened to do that, and then when they roll out what it looks like, it's actually not that bad, and then Malaysia actually pulled theirs back. But anyway, Costa Rica. If you want to live in that environment, I can tell you there's a lot of ultra high net worth individuals who are interested in Costa Rica, whether it's the beaches, whether it's the mountains. We are seeing a lot of interest for the country. It's an affordable place to get a residence permit. You can work towards citizenship if you're willing to learn the language and you're willing to put in the time there. But from a tax point of view, yeah, they have taxes, and they are now a member of the OECD. But you can live there and you can basically keep that tax rate pretty close to 0 if you're not earning money there. They will just make your money off of what you are living on. Also in Uruguay, in South America, if you want a place that is a little bit sleepier, if you want a place that is far away from it all, and if you potentially wanted a chance to work towards a second passport, you probably got to put in a good chunk of your time to actually get it done. But Uruguay has a long-term tax incentive for foreigners, basically a full exclusion where you can live down in Uruguay. And so people aren't really sure about Uruguay. They've heard, okay, rich Argentines go there. They've heard it's the Switzerland of South America. They've heard all the different stories. If you had to find one place to bank in South America, I think that would be where it is. Chile is rather difficult, and I found it quite cumbersome. Uruguay, not cumbersome, but among all the countries in South America, not a great banking continent. People, who want to bank from South America generally go to Miami. And so Uruguay is a place that you might not have heard of, and you might not have heard of their tax incentive, but they have now expanded it. Buy a property, go there, you can basically pay no tax. One country that is in South America people think is tax-free is Ecuador, where you get a good deal if you're paying taxes somewhere else. But if you're not paying taxes anywhere else, if you haven't signed up and you can't show that, then they may come in and tax you at a relatively low rate. And so those are some countries that you might not expect to have low taxes. Which one do you prefer? Leave a comment below. Now, what I'll also say is if you are living our trifecta lifestyle, which is 4 months in 3 different places, that can lend itself, in my opinion, to more adventure, greater lifestyle benefits. You get to see different parts of the world. You get to take in the different cultures. You get to see different business opportunities, have friends around the world. That's why I initially liked it. However, if you go to some of the emerging countries, for example, in South America, a country like Colombia, it is a more strict test in terms of how many days you spend there. So people often think of this days test where if I spend fewer than 183 days in a year, I'm off the hook for tax. And in a lot of more developed countries, that's not really going to be how it works. Now, Colombia is in the OECD, the high tax lobbying group. They have basically the lowest tax rates in the bloc. And so if you're coming from any developed Western country, Colombia is going to have lower tax rates. The system is a bit Byzantine, but if you are simply not spending enough time there, you can simply not pay the tax. And so compared to, let's say, a Western European country where, well, you didn't spend the time here, but you have this and this factor also. In Colombia, there aren't as many factors that can count against you. And that's just the case with a number of those kinds of countries, right? So if you look at some of the countries in Eastern Europe, like a Serbia or a Montenegro, you may not even qualify to pay taxes there if you're not living full time. And so I don't necessarily suggest people adjust their entire lifestyle simply to make it easier to pay tax, because if you don't have a tax residence by spending time somewhere, you probably, again, not tax advice, but from my perspective, you would want to have somewhere where you do pay tax on paper, which is going to add extra expense and perhaps a little bit of extra hassle. So if you're not getting a tax home by actually spending the appropriate amount of time there, then you may want to get it somewhere else. And so if you like the idea of, hey, I like Serbia, they speak English, it gives me a taste of Europe without some of the nonsense, but I only want it 4 months a year. That may help you avoid everything entirely. And so if you feel the same way about different countries, you can stack those together. When you start adding in Western European countries, when you start adding in the US, things are going to be a bit more dicey. But there are countries out there where, hey, they would love for you to spend 4 months there, have a residence permit, put money into the economy, and they're not going to ask you to pay tax. And so if you want that lifestyle, that may be a benefit that comes with that. Otherwise, if you want to spend a substantial amount of time in one country, those are 9 that you might not have thought about. But never just trust what's on the tin. Always look beyond the headline tax rate and see what opportunities may exist for you.